generally be a difficult boss, that Loki.
Yeah, he's something else. This
Um,
one actually knocked over my giant cup of coffee earlier.
oh
Uh,
no.
Off he goes.
Chart crimes and the chart criminals who go out of their way to break those very, very rigid laws, which are the laws of charts. Who better to talk to than James Stevenson, who is here joining me on this very early morning because he is in the wrong time zone. I've talked to him about
Well,
that, and
yeah,
he's just not willing to move. I'm Brian.
I talked to
Welcome.
Florida about it. Yeah, they don't want to move it. Yeah,
Welcome
sorry.
to Futurosa. So James, yeah, you won't move. I think that's very, very intransigent of you. And I don't know, man.
Yeah, the recalcitrance is what you don't want from the state of Florida. They will not move to Pacific time. I've asked.
I don't know who you asked, but I believe you that the answer is no.
Yeah.
So, for the one person watching who doesn't know who James Stevenson is, he is a chart wizard. Before we get too far into it, why don't you tell us why you're qualified to do charts?
Well, anybody who has a computer and Excel loaded onto it is somewhat qualified to do charts. In my professional day job career for the past 20 or so years, I've been working for Fortune 500 companies doing financial analysis and helping their leaders understand the business. And one of the best ways to do that is with graphic visualizations that help to make the numbers memorable. The trouble with presenting somebody with a table of numbers is that it's very hard to remember that table of numbers once it's been taken away. But the power of a good graphic visualization is that it sticks in your mind and you remember it later. And so I enjoy playing around with those and covering the news that nobody else was covering when I started for Tesla. Today, there's plenty of folks making charts about Tesla, but man, when I started doing it in 2018 or 2019, it felt like I was the only person covering stories like, the Model 3 sales being so strong, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Well, I will disagree with you there because there was a very famous channel, a very famous account called Tesla Charts that made a variety of very compelling, exciting charts.
Misleading. Yeah.
Yeah. So there were a lot of people that would do that, that would make really, really bad charts, really aggressively awful charts. Let's talk about a few types of chart crimes. Um, on my notes, I started with bad access.
Yeah, for sure. We saw one of those from the EPA. I made a video about it a couple of months ago, maybe, where they had put two different axes on their charts. They had one for Tesla, and they had a different one for everybody else. But if you weren't paying really close attention, you didn't notice it because they stacked them one over the other. So the Tesla chart was first, and then Tesla had its scale, and then right underneath it was everybody else, and they had their scale. I should have brought that as a visual, but maybe you can find it and drop it in here as an insert later.
I made a note. We'll see if it happens.
All right.
Uh, why would someone do such a thing? It's to simplify the data, right?
Uh, well, we are left to speculate on why we believe someone might have done it that way. One inference a person could draw is that they did it the right way the first time, showing everybody on the same chart with the same axis, and saw how ridiculously ahead Tesla is from everybody else, right? So what I like to do when I see a chart crime like that is chart it properly, put everybody on the same level playing field, and let's see how it actually shakes out. And of course, Tesla's EPA average fleet miles per gallon equivalent, or whatever it was on that chart, is just the only one on its side of the chart with everybody else on the other side, right?
Ridiculous. I saw one a couple weeks ago. I should have sent it to you. It was on battery degradation versus charge cycles, and what it showed was that they if you deep discharge and charge your battery, you only get this many cycles before you hit 70-80% degradation. But if you do just shallower ones, you get much more. But it didn't normalize it for how many total kilowatt hours in and out. So,
Oh, oh, yeah,
I looked at that and I was like,
yeah.
yeah,
That's a
that's
subtle one. That's one that may not have been intentional. It may have been a failure of understanding the data from the person who made the chart, right?
we have to. I appreciate that you're capable of stepping back and being objective, and I mean that. I mean that.
Well, never. What is the expression?
Never attribute to malice that which can adequately be attributed to absolute
Incompetence. Yeah,
stupidity.
yeah. That's the one. You got it. You knew which one I was thinking. Wow, we are locked in.
Locked
Yeah,
in. That's why
yeah.
I so frequently appear on James and Loki's Gems of the Week.
Yes,
Uh,
you're one of the most frequently liked posters on X. I have to stop saying Twitter and tweets.
yeah,
But yeah, you, Sawyer Merritt, Holmar's blog, a few others, Tesla Historian are
yeah,
frequently
shorts
shown
historian. Yeah.
on James and Loki's Gems of the Week, my weekly subscriber exclusive series in which I go through all the tweets that I liked and talk about why I like them.
It's a long show, but it feels like hanging out, uh, especially when you're talking to me. So another one I see, a chart crime, is bad time frames.
All right.
So you did one just this week where it was showing the collapse of Enron.
Yes.
And you're like,
Yeah.
yes, it looks exactly like it until this point. What happened next?
Yeah. So that we called out Tesla charts earlier. That was him committing one of his many chart crimes at the time. He indexed both Enron and Tesla against their all-time high. So at the time, early 2018, the all-time high for Tesla had been September 18th of 2017 or whatever it was. And at the time, that might have been like 300 and something dollars. I've got all this stuff in the video if you want to go check it out.
Right. Like
But
$18 in today's.
sure, yeah, you got to divide it by 15 to do the split adjustment. Not everybody is disciplined enough to remember to divide things by 15. Fudboss at Fudboss L or whatever the Twitter handle is for this new hater.
Fuddle
Uh,
boss.
Fuddleboss. All right. I tried.
Yeah, Fud
Uh,
loser boss. Mm-hmm.
yeah, you know my nickname for him. He doesn't say
Uh-huh.
what the L stands for. I think until we hear otherwise, we should assume that it's loser.
It's
It
just
seems like that's what it ought to be, given the posts that come from that account. Yeah, he was quoting Kathy Wood's $7,000 price target that he hadn't divided by 15 to call it a $467 price target. But I will go back to my Tesla chart story before I
yes.
diverge way too far off course and say that he had shown Enron declining and Tesla declining from all-time high. Here's the thing about all-time highs. Most stocks aren't at all-time highs. So, except for the ones that are, which is a really small minority of them, right? So every stock that isn't currently at all-time high is trading below the all-time high. It's not that much of an insult, really, to say Tesla is trading below its all-time high. Almost all the stocks are. So yeah, you can do the same exercise with any two companies you pick from their all-time high. They're going to be down, right? So yeah, that was the Tesla chart syncing up. Okay, we'll make the all-time high day zero, and we'll make the all-time high price an index value of 100, and we'll just chart how much lower it has gotten since then. I had to update that chart. Tesla is now trading at about 8 times the market capitalization it had at the time. Tesla Charts put out that chart, insinuating strongly that Tesla would go bankrupt within a few hundred days, as Enron had from its all-time high.
Uh-huh. So another one I see is excluding outliers.
Oh
There,
yeah,
there was a
yeah.
chart you showed where Tesla was the lowest number, and you're like, well, you left a lot of manufacturers off this list. Oh, because they would have been still in the middle of the pack.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's a good one. So, yeah, if you don't like the shape of the data when it's charted, one of the things you can do is throw out outliers and say, well, we're not going to count those. We're not going to count this one. Whichever ones are the worst, we'll throw those out until we get to Tesla, and then we'll stop throwing things out. We're not going to throw Tesla out.
No.
We'll leave them as the worst if you exclude a bunch that were worse.
Hmm.
I don't remember the details behind that one, but, yeah, that's a chart crime.
Are there other chart crimes you can think of? Oh, I know one that I love is
Alright.
uh, using a logarithmic scale so that everyone is compressed right here and Tesla's just above it at 100
Oh,
times more.
oh, sure. Yeah, that's a good one. You can play around with scales and, tell whatever story you want. Um, yeah, there's a lot of folks out there whose intent is not to, convey truth. Uh, their their intent is to convey FUD, and
I'm
we
conveying
see them all the
data.
time.
It's
Yeah.
it's data. Data doesn't lie, but this
Uh,
chart is pretty close.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mark Twain said something about there being three different kinds of lies: lies, damn lies, and statistics.
So, what is the takeaway from this? Is it actually look at the axes, actually try and understand the data? I love when they mix things like dollars on one scale and something that isn't dollars on another scale. That really doesn't paint a very good picture.
Yeah, you got to go on a case by case basis, looking at what the data really says. I mean, the thing I try to do every time is look at the data myself and see what it says, because you can draw very different conclusions from the same data. Like I did a whole series of videos on the California vehicle sales, because the criticism on Tesla was that Tesla was losing California market share. Well, market share is one of those very slippery metrics that you don't want to look at in isolation as just, well, Tesla's market share last year was 70% and now it's 60%, so they've lost 10 points of market share. Well, but no, go look at the raw numbers and see, is Tesla selling more vehicles this year in California than they were last year? They are? Okay. Has anyone increased their sales by more than Tesla increased their sales by? No, nobody has come within 30% of selling as many more vehicles this year than they sold last year. It's just a function of last year, every competitor's sales were so terrible that even though they've only managed to double their sales from 1,000 vehicles to 2,000 vehicles or whatever, that takes market share.
Hmm.
That's how market share works. You're allowed to take market share if you can double your sales from whatever pitiful number they were last year to twice as many as that. Uh, if the leader doesn't also double their sales, then you've gained market share on them.
That does remind me. I love the ones where they look at Tesla's EV market share. You know, at one time, James, they had 50, 70, 90% of the EV market share, but Fisker sold 3 units. So
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. The EV market share. A lot of people do their valuation based on building up on like back of the napkin math, they call it. Okay, if the total global market for sales is going to be 70 million cars, and if we think 30% of that is going to be EVs, then what's Tesla's EV market share of the 30% of the 70 million? And then you apply, an ASP to that, and then a gross margin to that, and then there's your earnings. If that seems like too simple an approach, I think it's because it is.
that's
That's
uh-huh.
uh,
Now, if we
yeah,
were talking semis versus passenger vehicles, I get it. Don't weight semis against passenger vehicles, but these are all passenger vehicles, James. I don't
yeah,
know if you know.
yeah. Yeah, it's
So,
not a different use case when somebody buys an EV versus when they buy a gasoline vehicle, right? Like most of the people who bought Teslas last year, 90% Tesla told us, were first time Tesla buyers.
mm.
Probably a whole lot of them, it was their first EV. They're not a different species EV buyers. They're the same people who were buying Toyotas and Hondas and GMs and Fords. Just now they're buying a Tesla because it's they judge the best value for their money, right?
Well, everybody who wants an EV's already got one, James. I've been told that as recently as this week, and it is a rich person's toy, despite the fact that you can get them for in the 20s in some states with incentives. So they'll, you know, it's like I always told people in the 90s, computers will never catch on.
Yeah, they are still trotting out the greatest hits. That is some old FUD right there. It's still around, huh?
That's
Nobody
that's
wants
Gordon
EVs.
Johnson level stuff. That's
Yeah,
2018 material. Yeah, but you know
yeah.
what? People love the greatest hits. The new stuff never compares. Uh, so.
Well, they had to stop using, "The more they sell, the more they lose."
Oh,
That was a popular refrain for a
yeah.
while. Yeah.
It's easy to look at the numbers and believe that to be true if you don't realize they're positive on a per unit basis and just see
Yeah.
total losses. You could make that bad extrapolation pretty easily. And I try to warn people on when they compare it to Lucid and say, yeah, well, Lucid's losing money on every vehicle, but so is Tesla. I say it's quite different because Lucid is losing money on the actual unit, which means the only way to lose less money is to sell fewer cars. And if there's one thing Lucid's good at, it's selling fewer cars. They've got that down to a science. So,
Yeah. Yeah, if your gross margin is negative, it doesn't matter how many you sell. That is a true, if the more you sell, the more you lose situation. If your gross margin is positive, then some break-even point exists. You
yeah,
may not be able to produce enough if your gross margin is too low, to break even, but,
but every
yeah,
unit is a step in the right direction, however
yes.
small.
Yeah, each one has a positive contribution margin is, how you would describe it.
Uh, you overestimate my ability to use good words.
Uh, well, no, I mean, that's
Well, that's how one would describe it.
yes, it was a failure of the Tesla Q community to do the break-even analysis, back in 2017, 2018, when they thought Tesla was structurally unprofitable. That was the expression that went around for a while. Some folks still try using structurally bankrupt or structurally unprofitable. Those are expressions used almost exclusively by Tesla Q. You can Google it and see that that was their favorite pet phrase to describe Tesla as being a company that can't be profitable in the future because the way they set up the business, it just can't make money, they thought, which is a very silly thing to believe when you saw Tesla reporting positive gross margins. If the gross margins are positive, and if you can increase the volume sold, there will be a break even point beyond which you're profitable.
The only company that I saw that I said that I would have used a phrase like that for was Movie Pass, because you're giving out hundreds of dollars of free tickets each month for $10. And I said, there's no way this makes sense. And I had people say, no, you don't understand. They get the data. I go, what data? Well, they know what movies people want to see. I said, right. They've already got a very good metric for that called box office sales.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, that was a real disaster, that one.
yeah,
Uh,
it's true. But yeah, I don't hold out hope for Lucid.
no.
They are losing, I think, more than a dollar at the gross margin level for every dollar of revenue they have, or
I
something.
think
That
that was
is terrible.
VinFast that
Yeah.
did that, but
Okay.
Lucid may also be. It is it is deeply problematic, and I sounded alarm bells last summer when I had a chance to talk with some Lucid employees who were sharing with me absolute horror stories on the warranty side because they were never designed for failure. They were designed like race cars. They were designed uncorked, which led to slightly higher
Oh,
failure rates. And then the problems were if you lose a side repeater or a fender cam on your car, Tesla mobile service comes out. You get a notification that they're on your car. You get a notification that they're gone. And 10 miles later, your FSD begins to work again because it recalibrated. For theirs, they have to take it into the shop, pull the fender off because there's no disconnects on the wiring, and then put it on a grid and manually recalibrate it. And that is catastrophic. It is a real problem. And
yeah.
even Invest Young, who you may have seen on X, went in for a battery fault on the screen, and they replaced his battery because whatever problem it was that threw up that fault could not be replaced short of just replacing the entire high voltage battery.
That is not a cost-effective repair, apparatus right there.
The king of understatement. I love it. If there are favorite chart crimes of yours, please post them in the comments. What did we miss? What do we misunderstand? Leave it. You know, you got to leave it. Like, subscribe, do the usual things. You know what you're doing. Smack the thummy thing. Either direction. It's ornamental. Doesn't really hurt my feelings if you'd say you didn't like it. And everybody else, maybe head over to James Stevenson's channel because he cannot underscore enough. And everybody else, stay tuned, stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you, clever robots, on the next one.